Greetings, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Kahi.
And we're the Genshin guys. Welcome all. This podcast is for fans of Genshin Impact, the mobile game made by Hoyoverse, also known as miHoyo. Here we talk about our opinions, experiences, and dreams about Genshin Impact. If you like our show, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. So, before we get started, Kahi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I just got through recording another episode podcast, so I'm still on that podcast recording high. Still got the energy going. Got my water, definitely refreshed, ready for the next segment. What about you, Josh? How are you doing on this fine day?
Yes, so that's right. We just recorded our episode from, by the time you guys are listening to this, it'll be last week. This is our 4th Interlude episode. This episode will be pre-recorded ahead of time in order to get ahead of any downtime that Kahi and I have in our schedules, so we can still make our weekly Monday release schedule. For example, I am out of town, so we won't be able to bring you up-to-date news, our usual Our Weeks in Genshin segment, or the answers to our current community question. But in terms of the community question, you'll have more time to answer, so hopefully it'll be a more lively discussion. As always, you can still reach out to us and follow us on our joint account on Twitter at GenshinGuysPod or our individual accounts, which are in the description. So we appreciate you all, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, so for this episode, we will be doing a, hopefully not too long one, but just a chill lore learn-along. So for those of you that have never listened to one of our lore learn-alongs before, we're going to read some of the game's lore. So things that you might have not known about. It's not front and center in the main narrative. Maybe it's more hidden around the world. But the wiki is a brilliant place where a lot of fans and people who are very interested in the lore come to compile all of the information from different side quests, from different items, descriptions, and things so that we can learn how to process what is going on in the world of Teyvat. And so there's a lot of lore. Hoyoverse really packs in the lore into like all these little places. But if you read the wiki, it's a big, compilation, and we can read it to you kind of like audiobook style. So we're going to do that. Hopefully you get something out of it. Today's topic is the Dragons of Teyvat. So we're going to be talking about dragons. We're going to be going into the wiki. So we may be talking about spoilers from Fontaine's Archon quest. So if you haven't already finished that, I would recommend go finishing that before listening to this episode, because there is things that we talk about in here that might be spoilers for that. As well as Nahida and Zhongli's second story quests. Hopefully you finished those by now, but if you haven't, I would finish those as well because they involve dragons. And we're going to be looking at that and taking turns while reading. So let's start with the overview. So, Kahi, would you start with the overview of the dragons for us, please?
Alrighty. So, overview. Dragons are a naturally large species of reptilians with varying appearances. Some are quadrupedal, some are serpentine, and some either have wings or none at all. They typically have physical attributes reminiscent of their associated element. For example, the earth dragon Azdaha has rough stone skin befitting of Geo. Dvalin has a much more sleek and svelte appearance befitting of Anemo. A dragon's size is proportional to its strength. The immensely powerful Azdaha at his full strength was as large as a mountain range, and his size when fought in Beneath the Dragon Queller, the quest, in his form after years of erosion. Dvalin is also stated to have suddenly grown in both size and power when he re-emerged as Storm Terror. Bishops and elemental dragons are born from the elements. As elemental beings, they have far longer lifespans than mortals and even gods. They typically grow more powerful with age, and several dragons are known for having enough strength to rival the likes of Archons and other similarly powerful beings. Such dragons include Azdaha, Dvalin, and Durin. However, other dragons like Ursa the Drake can be felled by powerful vision or delusion bearers. Dragons are not immune to erosion and are still subjected to the rules of the heavenly principles. Bishops and elemental dragons in particular are also extremely susceptible to the darkness of the void realm. So before we continue, There's a few things that definitely stood out to me in this one. I think one or two. But Josh, did anything stand out to you in that brief little overview?
Yeah, just how like the dragons, a lot of the dragons' looks kind of have to do with their element, and their size is proportional to their strength. That's pretty interesting.
To me, the one thing that stood out was the strength. The strength to rival the likes of Archons, or potentially even more powerful, but they also live longer. So they are more like primordial beings.
Yeah.
They are I would put them on the same level as gods, just different roles.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to bring this up. So in Fontaine, there is a dragon that is, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a dragon that kind of breaks this mold of what the appearance should be. So I'm probably saying dragons are just primordial beings that are large and, personify the elements, right? Just as how it says, if it's Geo, they're going to be really tough and strong looking. If they're animal, they're very swift and sleek looking. Or what do they call it? Svelte appearance. SVELTE. I haven't used that word.
They
in a
didn't
while.
mention this here, probably because this was written before, but like a pep.
Right.
You know, a pep? How big a pep was?
Yeah, a pep.
When we saw that.
Huge.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. Alrighty. So there's different types of dragons or primordial, creatures. So there are Vishops, Vishops and elemental dragons. Did you want me to take one and you take the other?
I'll read this. I'll read the Bishops and Elemental Dragons thing together.
All right, take it away.
Okay, so Bishops, Chinese is literally dragon lizard, are reptilian creatures who have existed since primeval times. They are believed to develop into dragons after long periods of time, such as how Azdaha is from the Geovishap species. Some Vishap species, such as the Geovishaps, are able to absorb elemental energy from the ley lines, and some Vishap species, such as the Bathysimal Vishaps, are even capable of evolution, allowing them to inherit more and better combat-related characteristics than their predecessors. However, this evolution has severe consequences for their race, namely the fact that they are no longer elementally pure, and thus cannot have one of the 7 sovereigns be born among them. Now we'll get into the 7 sovereigns a little bit later. Elemental dragons have not been well documented, although several examples exist. Dvalin and the 7 sovereigns are explicitly called elemental dragons, while Azdaha is an elemental dragon by deduction. Elemental dragons and ley lines will affect each other. During the events of the prologue chapter, Dvalin's rampage sent Mondstadt's elemental flow and ley lines into disarray, which forced the Knights of Favonius to cut off his connection to the other 3 of the Four Winds temples. Powerful Geovishaps are capable of drawing energy from ley lines. Azdaha planned on absorbing the energy from the entire world's ley lines and using it to destroy everything after freeing himself from the Dragon Queller. And at the start of the boss's fight's second phase, he draws energy from the ley lines through his limbs. Conversely, when human mining at the chasm damaged the ley lines, it brought Azdaha physical agony. Now, it's unknown whether non-elemental dragons exist, as all natural-born dragons named in the game have an elemental affiliation. Durin was created through alchemy and may not be subject to normal dragon physiology, while Ursa the Drake only appeared in the manga and little detail went into its background or abilities. Interesting. So, yeah, what stands out to me here is that, that the dragons who evolve are not considered pure anymore, so they can't have one of the 7 sovereigns be born among them. That's so interesting. And also, Azdaha being in physical agony when the humans mined the chasm and damaged the ley lines. Interesting.
The ley lines. Drawing power from the earth or the world. I try not to say earth in this game because it's not really earth. It's the world, the ground, for the planet, the star, whatever.
You gotta remember. Our planet is called Earth, but we call dirt Earth. Also. Right. So
they can be used interchangeably.
Yeah.
But as
in
far
English.
as Teyvat,
and it's different in other languages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these dragons, these elemental ones specifically, get their power or are very highly in tuned with the ground or the planet. So shows a deeper connection to the world of Teyvat. The Archons don't really get hurt when you damage the ground or a plant, so they don't really have that kind of physical connection or mental or maybe even spiritual. But these ones, these creatures, being that they have this kind of connection, probably is an important feature to keep in mind, because let's say if we have a certain character who is so in tune with nature and can't express their feelings and emotions on their body, maybe they express it in nature, because we have Nuvalet, who doesn't really have a lot of emotions himself, but after having a very heated exchange with Navia, suddenly the sky started to cry. Maybe they're related, who knows? Okay, so yeah, elemental dragons and bishops, very, very close cousins. So yeah, now going further into the investigations of these dragons, we have their history. So there's first part, introductory part, and there's the Archon War. After the Archon War,
just read history.
The Cataclysm. Yeah. We're going to start off with just a brief history, starting from the very beginning. Should I take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, according to legend, dragons were the dominant species of the world and were led by the seven sovereigns and the dragon king Nibelung. When the primordial one, the eternal throne of the heavens, descended, it waged war against the seven sovereigns, and after 40 years of battle, emerged victorious with the help of its 4 shining shades. It began recreating the world to pave the way for humanity, while those who refused to capitulate, such as the baptismal bishops, fled into the oceans. Since then, dragons have often come into conflict with denizens of the human realm, including humans and gods. Ancient gods and dragons have never seen eye to eye, and on the rare occasion that gods, humans, and dragons have managed to coexist, later circumstances would drive rifts between dragons and those of the human realm. It's kind of like the Adepti in this case, right? Like in Liyue, the humans and Adepti, they have different values, they have different ways of governing, but that's history. That's water under the bridge right now. However, according to Apep, the majority of dragons that had been reborn were now free from the hatred they once harbored against gods and humans, thus mostly ending the feud between them apart from a select few. So, yeah, bad blood, bad history, but it seems like they kind of got over it over time, but there are still the very few select ones that have, their personal grudges for whatever reason, important or just personal or otherwise. So yeah, that's a bit of their history. Any one particular thing stood out to you, Josh?
Well, I want you to do me a favor. Can you go to Seven Sovereigns and read that?
Seven Sovereigns.
Yes, go to the Seven Sovereigns page, and I think we read this before, but let's just read this for context right now. Read those first 3 paragraphs.
All right. So for those of you who are listening so far, we kind of just talked about these. We read the phrase several times. The Seven Sovereigns. So if you don't know, and a lot of us don't, the seven sovereigns are the 7 strongest elemental dragons of their respective element. The original 7 sovereigns were the rulers of the old world before the appearance of the primordial one. After 40 years of battle, the 7 sovereigns were vanquished, and those who refused to yield to the primordial one fled into the depths of the ocean. And just one more part is a new generation of sovereigns is currently being born. However, to retain their dragon form, they must remain pure. It is implied that if they do not remain pure, the sovereign will be born in a human form. Incredibly important that you hear this. It is implied that if they do not remain pure, the sovereign will be born in a human form. The people of Enkanomiya believe that the Hydro Sovereign will be reborn as a human due to the baptismal bishops straying from their pure Hydro forms into impure Cryo and Electro variants. What does this sound like to you, Josh?
So there's this character we met in Fontaine's story named Nuvalet. And yeah, so there's,
all right, there we go.
There's some really heavy implications leading up to the reveal of Nuvalet possibly being the Hydro Dragon, reborn as a human, but clearly a little different from normal humans. So I'm very curious to see if that comes to fruition or not. What about you?
Yeah, it's Neuvillette. It really can't be anyone else at this point. It's all but confirmed. He acts like it. He has the mysterious background. He has the power. I mean, I guess from reading the Seven Sovereigns part, we just read it. Due to the baptismal bishops strain from their pure hydro forms into impure cryo and electro variants. This is those twin bishops that we fought when we went into Enconomia.
Yep.
So yeah, that was the start of an impure, I guess what would you call it? Like crossbreeding or something?
Well, it's not
Or
necessarily
they just-
crossbreeding. It's just like the taintedness of like them absorbing the other elements.
Oh, right. The elements power, yeah. Just interacting with other elements, so that causes some kind of weird evolution and unexpected gene change or alteration. So,
Yeah, ley lines are crazy.
Born as.
Don't do ley lines,
How
kids.
do they work?
Stay in school.
Not even once.
So yeah, the next section we want to highlight is the Archon War. So we have Archon War and after the Archon War. So Archon War. In Liyue, Azdaha's awakening caused the earth to tremble with every movement he made. Morax approached him, seeking to stop the earth's shaking, and managed to befriend the dragon for some time, with the dragon even participating in the Archon War on Morax's behalf. However, later on, a combination of erosion and human mining at the chasm caused Azdaha to forget his friends and his love for humanity. Azdaha lashed out and attacked the chasm, destroying the settlement at Tianqiu Valley in the process. Morax chose his duty to protect humanity and personally went to the mines to subdue him. Even the Geo-Archon's power alone was insufficient to overpower the eroding dragon. He needed the help of Mooncarver, Mountain Shaper, and an unnamed Adeptus to create a domain that would be able to seal Azdaha away. And even then, Azdaha willingly allowed himself to be sealed. In the Inazuma region, the god Orobashi fell into Enconomia and eventually became its people's god, subduing the baptismal bishops which had harassed the humans and further empowering the Dainichi Mikoshi. It personally led research into baptismal bishops and their evolution. In the process, Orobashi and the researchers eventually came to the conclusion that the bishops naturally rejected Orobashi's power because they came from different realms, although they eventually succeeded in grafting Orobashi's coral into bishops. These coral fragments are necessary for the Watatsumi Goryu Matsuri, a ritual that prevents Watatsumi Island from being absorbed by the elemental realm. So, this fall, like Orobashi falling into Enconomia and becoming their god, and Azdaha lashing out and everything, happened around the time during the Archon War, like right before, but also during the Archon War, it seems like. So what about after the Archon War? So I'll just read this one too. So sometime after Barbados became the Animo Archon and new sovereign god over Mondstadt, the newborn sky dragon Dvalin appeared before him, enamored by his music. Barbados sang songs of Dvalin's beauty and befriended the dragon, later naming him the Dragon of the East of the Four Winds. Around 1,000 years ago, Ursa the Drake lurked around Mondstadt, occasionally threatening the city of Mondstadt. 10 years before her rebellion, Vanessa and her tribe, having wandered far from their homeland, were attacked by the dragon and fled to Mondstadt. Although they were taken in, they were promptly enslaved by the corrupt Mondstadt aristocracy. When Vanessa stood up to Barca Lawrence on Venti, who unbeknownst to them was Barbados' mortal disguise, the Lawrence scion retaliated by purchasing Vanessa and her entire tribe and forcing Vanessa to win successive gladiatorial battle. What the heck word is this? Forcing Vanessa
Gladiatorial.
and forcing
Like gladiator.
and forcing Vanessa to win successive gladiatorial battles for their freedom. The Lawrences, however, had no plans on letting Vanessa win. In exchange for peace, they negotiated with Ursa the Drake to sacrifice Vanessa and her tribe to it. In the middle of the battle, Venti revealed his true identity and drove Ursa away. So that was after the Archon War. So we can see how the roots of Mondstadt, Inazuma, and Liyue in a lot of aspects that happened during the Archon War that helped to shape the present day versions of those places. Okay, so Kahi, can you read this Cataclysm part?
All right. The Cataclysm. The Kyanria alchemist named Gold, or Rhine Daughter, created one of her masterpieces, the artificial dragon Durin. 500 years ago from present story in the game, around the time of the Cataclysm, she sent Durin to the surface world. However, it ended up unleashing havoc and destruction upon Mondstadt on its arrival. Hearing the suffering of his people, Barbados awoke from his slumber and summoned Dvalin to aid him in ending Durin's rampage. The two eventually emerged victorious, slaying Durin over Dragonspine. However, Dvalin ended up ingesting Durin's poisonous blood and fell into a deep slumber in the ruins of Old Mondstadt to recuperate. At some point during this time, Apep was also corrupted by King Deshret. Apep also allowed Deshret to build a kingdom in its lands in return for it consuming his body for knowledge when he died, meaning Apep was to consume Deshret's body. But King Deshret died with forbidden knowledge, causing great anguish to Apep as it had to muster all of its strength to survive, unable to analyze the knowledge acquired. So, a couple things that we're learning about here. How these dragons are affected, how they can be defeated, how they can be quelled, or how they can be corrupted. There's a phrase earlier that it brought up a few things. Just the word erosion. It's not like something specific. It's just, think of it like aging or just decay, like mental decline. Like imagine you live for like thousands of years. You're probably going to get a little weird. I mean, the way your mind ages, the way I guess in this case, the way
we can imagine
elemental bodies.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just aging in general, like decaying.
Like your body doesn't age like your mind ages faster than your body. So like your mind starts to go before even though a lot of these people are essentially immortal or just live hundreds of years. And so gods and dragons are like really susceptible to it the older they get, right?
So some kind of maintain like their same attitude, but some go crazy just because of how long they've been around. I think one of the Yakshas had this problem too, where the memory loss and they just kind of went into hiding. They couldn't remember anyone, and it was part of their story. It was pretty sad too. But Rhine-Daughter, Gold, Durin, that anyone remember the Dragonspine event, the one that you can't really play anymore, the one that seems really, really important nowadays, especially with all these elemental dragons? I wish they brought that back. Anything stood out to you in this section in the history?
Yeah, I mean, just the like it's interesting to me that like these dragons they're just all so powerful. So everything that's happening, that it's like it takes a lot of effort to stop these dragons because they're so powerful. And even Rhine-Daughter's artificial dragon. So I don't know, we saw Apep like in Nahida's story quest being gigantic. Just kind of just blows your mind in terms of scale of how big these dragons can be. Like they even mentioned Azdaha big as a mountain range, you know what I mean? Like that sounds crazy too. But man, the dragons are just so powerful. So it makes me think like are we able to do anything in the future that involves dragons directly? Because all this stuff that we hear about, like we did Dvalin stuff, which was like a big deal. It was like the beginning of the game, right? We fought Azdaha in Zhongli's story. But I'm wondering like and we have the Apep boss technically, but we don't really fight like Apep. We fight like we're inside Apep fighting stuff or something like that. It's kind of confusing. But yeah, I'm just wondering how dragons will be more involved in the future of like the main narrative versus just side stuff, if at all. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. There's so much history in the game that's based around the events of things happening to dragons that I think it's pretty interesting.
Something that interesting to note about just the treatment or the view of dragons across cultures, across stories. There's always seems to be this high reverence for a dragon creature or dragon-like creatures, just because in nearly every single culture's history that makes mention of it, whether it's fictional or whether it's folklore, whether they truly believe they existed at some point or not. Just there's always a certain amount of respect given to them and the idea of a dragon. They've never really been looked down upon. They've always been like revered, you know, they've always been feared. There's always been like hype, like, oh, back then we had these huge creatures, we had this awesome living being that, you know, flew around. Some didn't fly around, some were scary, some were like pretty much gods. There's always been people who were just dragon enthusiasts or fanatics or whatever, but I don't think any particular culture, as far as like the inspiration for dragons in general, I don't think any culture has belittled a dragon. They've always been like these really cool creatures, almost like dinosaurs, like almost like any kind of ancient creature. There's always been like, they've always been treated very, very well. They've always been cool, even before like popular media and stuff like that. So I thought that's pretty interesting parallel. Present day, part 1. 4 years before the events of the game, on Diluc's 18th birthday, Ursa the Drake was lured into attacking his and his father's Krapus's caravan. So I believe that means canonically Diluc is 22 years old. Their entire retinue was slain, and Diluc was defeated by the dragon when Krapus intervened, using a delusion to repel the dragon. However, the delusion's power backfired on him, and he shortly died afterwards, either from the delusion itself or by Diluc killing him to spare him the agony. Sometime afterwards, the Il Dottore visited Mondstadt and personally slew Ursa, thus indebting Mondstadt to the Fatui. During the events of the prologue chapter, the Abyss Order sought to weaponize Dvalin in their plans to destroy the nations of Teyvat and eventually Celestia. However, their plot was eventually foiled by the combined efforts of Venti, the Traveler, Jean, and Diluc. Freed from the poisonous blood that put him in physical agony and freed from the Abyss's order, or the Abyss Order's lies, Venti and Dvalin's friendship was rekindled, and Dvalin became Mondstadt's ally once more. Alright, and present day part 2.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about it.
Oh, we can definitely talk about it, because I just realized Il Dottore visited Mondstadt and personally slew Ursa. And that's why there's Fatui in Mondstadt, and that's why Mondstadt is indebted to the Fatui.
Right.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why negotiations are so hard for Mondstadt at the time.
Wow.
And Senora could just waltz in and take Venti's noses.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Wow, he just walked up and slew Ursa.
I mean, he didn't walk up maybe, but he apparently somehow took him out, and we just don't know how. But it's implied from the manga, I believe. So, yeah, because that whole story, that whole like 4 years ago and Diluc's 18th birthday, this happens in the manga. So, this is something that you can look up. And it is pretty important to the story of Mondstadt. So, okay, so let's keep it going. I'll read the last half, which is present day. Azdaha, through the artificial vessel of Ju, who, if you remember, is like this little girl-looking NPC, attempted to break Morax's seal at the Dragon Queller by having miners chip away at the seal from the outside, while Azdaha overpowered it from within. The plan was eventually thwarted when Zhongli, Morax's mortal vessel, the Traveler, and Kunjun, who was unknowingly possessed by a fragment of Azdaha's consciousness that retained his goodwill towards humanity, investigated the miner's disappearance and stumbled upon the plot. After a hard-fought battle, Azdaha's body was resealed while his spirit went dormant again. Now, Nehida, who was supposed to take care of Apep, had initially forgotten about her task due to her tampering of Irminsul to remove the forbidden knowledge. The removal of the forbidden knowledge ended up creating a large void in Apep's body, and by the time Nehida had remembered her task, Apep was on the verge of death, which would, if it happened, would unintentionally destroy Sumeru with its abundance of energy. Apep was successfully saved by Nehida and two elemental fungi that had successfully escaped Apep's body during the cataclysm, with the elemental fungi sacrificing themselves to restore the Heart of Oasis in Apep's body. Apep would still remain distrustful of the gods and humans, but elected to instead watch them to see how far they could go under the heavenly principles, which is Nahida's second story quest. So, the first part I read was with Azdaha was Zhongli's second story quest, and Nahida's second story quest was the Apep one. So, like again, it's really interesting that Azdaha is like sealed, but he's like also trying to get out, but he's also not. And Apep, who this whole situation started happening because of the events of the Archon quest, where we had to, remove the part of the Airman soul that had the forbidden knowledge. And yeah, it's just really, really interesting how they chose to link all these things together. Any notes, anything that you thought was interesting, Kahi?
Well, a lot of people, well, I don't want to assume, but like for me specifically, when I'm reading this part about present day, it's weird that the sequence of how it's presented, Diluc and Kripus Caravan and, Dvalin in Mondstadt. And then it talked about, Azdaha with Zhongli and Liyue. And then it talked about Nahida and Irminsul and Apep. And I'm like, wait, that's kind of a weird gap. Where's Inazuma? Remember, Inazuma was when we introduced like the Enkanomiya area where we had the Bishops and you had the twin Bishops. Now, Bishops and dragons are kind of on the same line of like, primordial creatures and beings. So technically that was their dragon creature part in the story. So it's not that they forgot, it's just the concept of dragons is very, I don't want to say very loose, but it's not very well defined. Like, this is a dragon or this is a that. And especially when Fontaine came out, and of course this wiki is being written as we speak. Fontaine has a lot of information coming out, and there is a dragon story quest. It's a world quest where you meet a dragon where the form doesn't necessarily look like what you would expect a dragon to be, and they just straight up said it. It's in the dialogue too, and you're trying to describe it, and you're like, hey, this doesn't look like a dragon we've met before, and then the NPCs around it's like, well, what have you seen before? And you're listing everything that this particular creature looks like.
Wait,
did you do this world quest? Okay, this is an underwater world quest. You have to find it in like an underwater cave. I'm pretty sure you haven't found it yet. This is the one that I'm trying to work on. But I don't want to bring up too much. But yes, there is a dragon creature. It's not Nouvellette. It is a creature, and it's a world quest underwater. Hopefully, some people have found it already. I'll look it up. I'll let you know about it later on. We could probably talk about it in a future episode. But the concept of dragons and their appearance is not a strict definition. So that's why I tried to bring it up as they're primordial creatures, very old creatures that have very big and powerful influence over their element. Just by what we've read so far in this whole like wiki, Nouvellette is more than likely the hydro elemental dragon sovereign reincarnation. However, there is also another big creature that is pretty much implied to be a dragon as well. It's not the main one. So, I'll probably talk about that later on.
Well, I mean, when we find out more about Nouvellette, maybe if his story quest comes out, or maybe like we just find out more in the Archon quest, then we're probably going to learn more about the dragons, and so I think that'll be really fun too.
We will definitely revisit this over time as well, because we still have a couple extra nations. We still have Natlan. We still have Shneznaya.
I just think it was a good time to like talk about like and just bring up awareness around the Dragons of Teyvat, because if Nouvellette really happens to turn out to be the dragon, then we have some reason to to know more about the dragons in the past, like how he relates to the other elemental dragons of the world and the history of Teyvat. So it's pretty important, right? So that's pretty much it for our lore learn along today. I think this topic, we have a lot of different events that happen outside of the main game's narrative that are related to the Dragons of Teyvat, to the creation of the current world, the Teyvat, the way it is right now after the primordial one descended. And there's potential in the future for more dragon lore from Nouvellette, for example, but also just in general from other things that might happen in the game. Now, so the community question for this week is going to be, do you have a favorite dragon in Genshin? Who is it and why? Now, please pick from the confirmed dragon people, from the confirmed dragons in the story so far, and let us know who it is. Who do you think? Now, we aren't doing a answer for last week's community question because we haven't gotten those yet, so we will do both answers, as always, when we come back from last week's community question and this week's. Now, let's do our last wish segment. Kahi, ready?
Let's get it. All right, I think I'm still going to be rolling on that weapon banner.
Okay, me too.
Okay.
How much pity do you have?
I do not know. Oh, for the weapon banner?
Yeah.
Ooh, let me check. It's been a while since I rolled for a good 5-star weapon, or at least I got one. What was the last one? It might have been Dia's weapon. Let me check. Weapon banner history. What was the last 5-star weapon I got?
I got Yelan's and mine is like 20 pity, 25. Wait, less than 20, like 21, 22.
Oh, wow. I don't actually have it. My
history. Oh, you can't see it? It doesn't go? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't go that far back.
Okay, wait. Let me roll first then, because maybe you'll get it. That'd be great. All right.
Maybe.
I'm gonna roll the weapon banner. A 20 pity. Boom. Let's see what happens. And blue. Okay, that's fantastic. Amazing. Rah. I got the Skyrider sword. Yay! Wow, so cool. Okay, Kahi.
All right, here we go. Wishing for a weapon here. It's blue.
No. Okay.
Dang it.
Eventually, Kahi, just only roll weapon banner.
Magic guide. Wait, I got magic guide last time too. What the heck?
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh well.
Well,
one day.
Still got a guaranteed 5-star character next banner.
Great. All right, guys. So thank you everybody for listening. That wraps up the show for today. If you have time, please leave us a comment and a review. We'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening. Follow us on Twitter, once again, at Genshin Guys Pod, or me at Twitter at JSide Gaming and twitch.tv/JSide, and Kahi at Kahiao, KAHIYAO, on YouTube and Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. And as always,
at Astra Abyssos.
Oshitoshin o mezase.
Enjoy.